The Paris Opera House was abuzz with excitement. The grand premiere of the new opera La Nuit Éternelle, composed by the brilliant yet troubled Henri Dupont, had drawn an exclusive crowd of the city's finest. The seats were filled with aristocrats, critics, and musicians, all eager to witness what many believed would be the performance of the century. The chandeliers glittered like stars above, and the air was thick with perfume and anticipation. The lead soprano, Isabelle Lemoine, stood center stage in her exquisite gown, ready to perform her aria. Her voice, rich and powerful, had already earned her the admiration of the city's music elite. But tonight, something was different. Something felt wrong. As Isabelle began to sing, a subtle change came over her. Her face, once radiant with confidence, became pale. Her movements slowed, and for a brief moment she seemed to falter. The audience watched in stunned silence as she collapsed to the floor, her final notes trailing off into the air. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Panic spread quickly as Isabelle lay motionless, her lifeless body a stark contrast to the beauty of the stage. The curtains were drawn quickly and chaos erupted in the opera house. A doctor was called, but it was too late. Isabelle was dead. The police arrived shortly after, and the scene was sealed off. A detective, Inspector Victor Marchand, took charge of the investigation. He was known for his methodical approach and sharp mind, traits that had earned him a reputation for solving even the most puzzling of crimes. As Marchand examined the scene, he learned that Isabelle had been poisoned. A small vial of cyanide had been found in her dressing room, and it was clear that the poison had been introduced into her drink before the performance. But the question was, who could have done it? The suspects. 1. Henri Dupont, the composer. Dupont was a genius, but his reputation had been marred by his erratic behavior and his tumultuous relationship with Isabelle. The two had been rumored to have had a passionate affair, one that had ended bitterly. Dupont had also been very protective of Isabelle, some would say possessive, and the police found traces of his presence in her dressing room just before the performance. 2. Marc Duval, the conductor. Duval was known to be an ambitious man, and many believed that he resented Isabelle's success. He had always wanted the lead soprano role for his lover, a young up-and-coming singer named Claire Bellamy. Duval's jealousy was well known, and many suspected that he might have used Isabelle's downfall to promote Claire's career. 3. Claire Bellamy, the young soprano. Claire was a rising star in the opera world, and some whispered that her close relationship with Duval went beyond professional. While she had always shown respect for Isabelle, there were rumors of competition between them. Isabelle had a reputation for being protective of her place at the top, and Claire had often been seen on the verge of tears, overwhelmed by the rivalry. Violet Moreau, Isabelle's best friend. Violet was a fellow soprano, and some said that she had been in love with Isabelle. Their friendship had always seemed perfect, but Violet's jealousy of Isabelle's success had grown over time. Violet had also been seen arguing with Isabelle the night before the performance. Could Violet's emotions have pushed her to poison her friend? The investigation. Inspector Marchand interviewed each of the suspects, and as the evening wore on, the layers of intrigue and passion surrounding the opera house began to unravel. Henri Dupont was the first to be questioned. He appeared disheveled and distraught. "Isabelle was everything to me," he said, his voice cracking. "I would never harm her. She was my muse." Marchand didn't believe him. Dupont's presence in Isabelle's dressing room, coupled with the fact that he was the last person to speak with her before the performance, made him a prime suspect. But Dupont swore he was simply offering her encouragement before the show. Next, Marchand spoke to Marc Duval. The conductor was calm, perhaps too calm. "I didn't poison her," he said matter-of-factly. "Isabelle was a brilliant singer, but she was a disaster in rehearsal. She couldn't keep up with the tempo. The opera would have been better without her." Duval's coldness only deepened the mystery. Then Marchand turned his attention to Claire Bellamy. The young soprano seemed nervous and fidgety, unable to make eye contact. "I never wanted to hurt Isabel," she said quietly. "But I did wish for the lead role. I won't lie about that. But I would never poison her. That's not who I am." Finally, Marchand met with Violet Moreau. She was visibly upset, her hands trembling. "I loved Isabel, you know," she said through clenched teeth. "But she always overshadowed me. She was so beautiful, so talented. And I was always in her shadow. I never wanted her dead, but sometimes I wished things could be different." Marchand listened to each suspect's story, but one thing struck him as odd. The opera's libretto, the very opera that Isabel had been performing when she died, contained a peculiar phrase. The words, "poisoned chalice," were repeated in the final act, almost like a dark omen. The revelation. After much deliberation, Marchand gathered the suspects in the opera house's grand hall. He was about to reveal the killer's identity. Isabel's death was not the result of an angry composer, a jealous conductor, or a bitter rival, he began. No, it was something far more personal. The motive wasn't merely professional rivalry or love. It was the obsession with perfection. Marchand turned to Violet. "You poisoned her drink, Violet. You couldn't stand being in Isabel's shadow any longer. You couldn't stand that, despite your talent, Isabel was always the star. You knew the poison would be undetectable and that during her aria the symptoms would appear gradually. It would look like a tragic accident, something brought on by the stress of performance." Violet's face paled and she collapsed in front of the detective. You don't understand. I loved her," she whispered. "But I couldn't bear it any more. I thought if she were gone, I could finally be free." Marchand nodded grimly. "You poisoned her in her dressing room just before the show. You knew she would drink from the chalice, and you counted on the gradual effect of the poison. But your jealousy led to her death. It was you who created the tragedy you so desperately sought to escape.